visit with our brother Booker T. Coleman, a student of our mighty scholar, John Henry Clark, who has become an ancestor now, but whom we still continue to celebrate. So you can consider this as part of that celebration. We're here to look into the role of the Shabaka stone in the discovery of the unified family. Yes. What I was saying basically was about the celebration which we were here for today in honor of Professor Henry Clark, our teacher and elder, and now an ancestor for us, who taught our beloved brother here right from the age of 12. And in his words, he had no choice but to do what he's doing right now. And we're quite delighted. The brother had studied the unified field theory account that was presented in our time press, and somehow had made a connection with the Shabaka stone, which he would like to share with us. And in the process, we can share that testimony, which is certainly very, very spiritual, very, very important, and a very serious, if not critical, component of our whole being as a people, in terms of our history, in terms of the destiny that surrounds the unified field theory, or the theory of everything, where we're actually destined to come up with that theory. And that's basically what we look forward to. Brother Booker T. Coleman, a distinguished citizen of Africa, an excellent scholar, to share with us today. Thank you, brother. Okay.
Thank you, my brother, Dr. Oyibo. And I am more, if not just as in awe of Dr. Oyibo and what he has done. And as he said earlier, being a student of Professor John Henry Clark, I was introduced to culture and history. And being a teacher, everything I've ever learned, I've always tried to break it down on a child's level. And my strength in education has been being an early childhood teacher. Because in being an early childhood teacher, I've had to break things that would be very complex down on a very simple level. I've been studying this for a while. This is astronomy, this is physics, all of which I was not interested in when I was growing up. The interest came when I understood that this was my history and my culture, our history and our culture. And I am in awe of Dr. Oyibo because if justice is served, if Ma'at is righteous and is recognized, he will be a Nobel Prize winner. Because what he has done, literally, I know is correct. I'm not going to speak on others. I'm not going to use other people. I'm going to directly deal with Dr. Oyibo's work here. I do not have the mathematical background that Dr. Oyibo has. However, in looking at it, at his formula, I know it's correct by the variables that he's given, by the letters that he has given to each essence, and by studying this Shabaka stone. Shabaka was a pharaoh of the 25th dynasty. I'm afraid of dates because we're going to find out that we're much, much older than we really are. However, using what we have today, you know, if you can't get to the star in the long distance, what you do is you hook up with every short distance star until you get to your long distance. So we're going to use with what we have now to try to reach back and touch fundamental. What Dr. Oyibo has done, put down on paper, literally will change the way humanity thinks. I would even dare say it will usher in a new level beyond Homo sapiens sapien. But more importantly than that, I think we will remember our history. Much of what Dr. Oyibo has done, with all of my admiration, I think he is recalling, he is remembering what we have forgotten as a people. The Ma'afa, this period of enslavement, has put us in the like of a sleep. Many of us are coming up out of this sleep, and I think that while this seems futuristic, it really was our past. And I think that we have devolved as a human people because we've allowed people who know not to tell us what they think they know. And what Dr. Oyibo has done is changed the way in which we look. This will change the way people think. This will change the way in which we act. This will change the way buildings look. This will change the way in which we talk to each other, the way in which we build things, the way in which we do things. Because when you come in contact with something such as the Shabaka stone, it changes fundamentally your thought pattern. You cannot think the same way. Shabaka stone, they say, was written approximately 710 years before the Christian era by a Pharaoh Shabaka of the 25th dynasty. However, in all of this, what you notice is that there are two horizontal lines that go across. There are approximately 62 that go down. And between line 24 and 46, it's almost obliterated because the people, when they found this was found, and people used this as a tethering stone. In other words, when you wanted to ground grain, you would put the grain on a rock and put another rock and then beat the rock. Well, this was the bottom rock. So it is obvious that the peoples living in Egypt today could not have been the masters of this work, for if they had been, they would have known never to do something like that. So it's obvious that the people who did this were no longer in the land or were not in control of the land. So it is of an African origin, the 25th dynasty. The first two lines, written by Shabaka, tell of how they came upon what is known as the Memphite text, which is the original text. And because we know that our Kemetic ancestors wrote on either papyrus and sometimes on leather, we know that Shabaka is saying that it was worm-eaten, but that it was such a dynamic scientific treatise on the coming into being of the universe, it was too important to let it go into oblivion. So he had his scientists and his artists rewrite it in stone. So you get the concept of it's written in stone. In other words, it's permanent. This is where the concept comes from. Shabaka was saying, we will write it in stone for all posterity so that it will never be taken away from us. And it's so interesting that even though they beat it to death, it still came alive. This story tells of how the universe came into being. It tells of how all and everything were in the waters of Nun in the very beginning, matter. And that at some point in time, rising through the water came Ptah. Dr. Oyibo has also done a great deal of work on turbulence. Turbulence, as I saw it, and again, what's going to be great about this conversation is I'm learning. I'm not here to lecture or to preach. I'm here to learn from Dr. Oyibo from a mathematical perspective what I am theorizing, what is known as metamath by Dr. Theophile Obenga and Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop. Those thoughts that come into your mind before you write it down. I have thoughts, but he has written it down. I'm hoping to share my thoughts to see where it fits in all of this. So as we go through this, we'll learn how all of this occurred. Because of the nature, I would just like to back off and just get deeper into the conversation, because I think that I've pretty much finished my introduction. But I am very happy to be here, and it's been months and months since I've been saying to Dr. Oyibo that we need to get together, because again, I have his book. And the brother did great work to get me on discount. But if you knew how much his math book cost, I mean, it's an expensive, I mean, Dr. Oyibo, it was $125. And he got me discount. So you know I bought two. Because I'm not going to let nothing happen to this. But when I read his book on turbulence, turbulence is Ptah. It is the primordial scission. From my mind, it is that first inkling where something comes from nothing, because there is no such thing as nothing in the African world. Nothing is something that you can't see. But nothing is still something. In the English language, nothing becomes nothing. But that can't exist in the universe because everything is something within the universe. Even if it cannot be seen, it is something. It's just unseen something. So we're dealing with the unified field theory, which I truly believe is, as defined by the Shabaka Stone, the waters of Nun. That, to me, is what the unified field theory is, or what is known as GUT, G-U-T, the Grand Unified Theory. Einstein claimed to have died trying to find it. And I'm saying, had he just looked to Africa, he would have found it. So that on one level, Dr. Oyibo's work, the Grand Unified Theory, this formula, is Nun. His book on turbulence is Ptah, and Atum is the consciousness that comes forward when you understand the Grand Unified Theory and turbulence. Now we need specificity from Dr. Oyibo in terms of math. Let's get it on.
Dr. Oyibo,
Yes.
I just want to interject one thing. Later on, when people are looking at this, they will better understand exactly what unified theory is. So if you could explain that in terms of what it is that we're really looking at.
Yes. Well, the unified field theory is a theory embedded in the human spirituality, in reality, that was supposed to show the connection, the unified position of all the forces. That says the forces, if they're called forces, just like the human family, you should have the same origin. Okay, if you're a human being, you must have some kind of origin, common origin. Africans have the same great-grandparents, and and so on and so forth. So forces are therefore thought to have a common origin, except that the sciences, as they have it, have not been able to show that common origin. They will study those forces separately. They will see the effects. A few cases they have commonalities, other times they're separate. So the principle then of the unified field theory is to unite all the forces.
What are those forces?
Well, in reality, humanity doesn't know all the forces, but they claim to have identified four, which are the gravitational force, which holds the planets and the universe together. Then you have the electromagnetic field, force, which holds, you have the electric fields and magnetic fields. They're responsible for energy production and so on and so forth. It's a very unique kind of field that moves electrons and all kinds of subatomic particles, and any object that has elements of electric or magnetic field or components in them. Then the third category, or which are actually two, are the so-called strong forces and the weak forces. The strong force binds together the repelling components of the the universe system. For example, if you have two magnets, you have, the like poles would repel, okay, and unlike would attract. And so what happens is when you have those together, they will be bouncing away. That's a very, very strong kind of situation where they're trying to push one another away. So if you can imagine a force that will keep them together, force them together, that is the one that's called a strong force.